No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 457. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us before the weekend. Breaking today, Slippery Starmer's deranged plan to stay in Downing Street by ushering in a full-scale Islamist takeover are continuing at pace with a plan to make failed London Mayor Sadiq Khan a lord, given a cabinet role, which has prompted genuine outrage.
Keir Starmer wants to make Sadiq Khan a lord. Over in the House of Lords fancy dress department, they're concerned because they've never had to make an ermine gown for a little evil pygmy before.
He stands against the very institution to which he now seems to be on the verge of being elevated. This man would abolish the House of Lords left to his own devices.
And still, the propaganda and denialism about what's really happening in the Disunited Kingdom continues, with Khan hiring Woke ITV newsreader Charlene White to shut down official conversation in London about the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs.
Talking about something such as grooming gangs, though, that also needs to come with facts, figures and data. Otherwise, it will just be seen as hearsay. It's very important.
9,000.
That's all I was asking for.
9,000 cases are being looked at again. So please don't tell me it's not out there, because I have spoken to the victims. And I'm sorry, Charlene, if you had, you wouldn't have said that.
Meanwhile, the world looks on in horror as the evidence of Islamism destroying the world's greatest country becomes overwhelming.
Allah SWT says in the Quran, do not take the Jews or Christians as your friends and protectors.
Why do you think they are onto the Pakistani so much?
Because they hate, because they can't be used, bro. They got no culture, they got nothing to them.
The thing is, the Zionists control everything, and that's what happens. They try to silence us.
Oh, but this dude is still banging on about diversity.
We fought slavery and won. We fought apartheid and won. We fought Clause 28 and won. These people will never defeat us because they'll never share our passion.
I'll reveal responses from Tommy Robinson, Kelly J. Keane and Lawrence Fox in my digest next as Restore Britain continues to surge. Then Connor Tomlinson of Tomlinson Talks is here. He'll also be opening up today about the horror of the police visiting his home after a politically motivated false report of abuse against his wife. This is how desperate our enemies now are, folks. Also coming up on the show today, an Indian Labour defection to Reform UK prompts the latest civil war within the party as Nigel Farage continues to play the MSM game. And the fake news agents at Global are turning Angela Rayner into their new left-wing media star. This is going to make you sick. We'll also show you Lewis Goodall stalking Liz Truss at CPAC later. Then in the Royal Uncancelled After Show over on Substack, after the main show, Prince Harry in full-on panic mode about William stripping Archie and Lily of their titles. He's also panicking even more, though, about his rapidly shrinking hairline. We'll have all the latest as royal YouTube sensation according to Taz returns. You can also vote right now for the worst Briton in the world this week. Do you know last week we had over 100,000 votes? You guys are incredible. You can find the mega poll in the posts tab on YouTube. Remember, this is when we put our Union Jackasses, which are voted for you, by you two, head to head. So we had Monday, Matthew Wright, because of his clash with the Free Speech Union on LBC. On Tuesday, it was Matt Goodwin, or Matt GBT, as some people now call him. Wednesday, Morgan McSweeney for the phone theft lie. And Thursday, John Swinney for his total insane reaction to the Reform UK leader in Scotland telling a gay joke 8 years ago. So do keep your votes coming in throughout the show. The worst Briton in the world and your comments revealed before we go today. But now, let's go. There's rewarding failure, and then there's something far more sinister. And Slippery Starmer's revolting plot to give London's failed Mayor Sadiq Khan a peerage before the May elections, putting him in the House of Lords and paving the way for a senior cabinet role, is most definitely the latter. Because this really is about one thing: keeping Starmer in Downing Street to usher in an Islamist takeover of our disunited kingdom. The biggest iftar in the Western world in London's Trafalgar Square was just the start of the Muslim domination that will become baked into our day-to-day lives as Labour attempts to see off the hard-left Islamist Green Party. The disgust over Lord Khan today is total.
Keir's frightened of his own shadow, can't prescribe the IRGC, can't prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood, brings Sadiq Khan into his cabinet because he's probably worried about a challenge after the locals, when I think the country will back Nigel Farage, will back our local candidates.
You feel like in government you fail upwards, so he's going to go from City Hall to the House of Lords. And after years of, rising crime, massive falling trust, Londoners are basically told the answer is to send Sadiq Khan to the House of Lords so he can watch over them for life.
There isn't a single divisive policy on which this man hasn't jumped in order to promote himself, including making arguments for reparations during the slave trade, talking against our history, denouncing our national heroes, wishing to tear down our statues. He stands against the very institution to which he now seems to be on the verge of being elevated. This man would abolish the House of Lords left to his own devices. He's anti-British.
He made a Knight of the Realm, a year and a bit ago? And there was that incredible image of His Majesty putting the sword on Sadiq Khan's shoulders and on his head. And I thought perhaps it would have been more appropriate for him to have been knighted with one of those many zombie knives that have plagued the streets of London since he became mayor over a decade ago now.
Remember, Khan just last week started advocating for London to overturn the biggest democratic vote in British history, to take the country back into the European Union without even asking the public. I genuinely believe Sadiq Khan wants civil war. He's evil. Here's Katie Hopkins' take.
Keir Starmer wants to make Sadiq Khan a lord. Over in the House of Lords fancy dress department, they're concerned because they've never had to make an ermine gown for a little evil pygmy before. I'm being told by my sources there that special little fairy hamsters are being fattened up to make a little teeny tiny gown for Lord Cunt when he gets into the Lords.
Susan Hall, Khan's Conservative opposition in London, doesn't even think he will resign the London mayoralty, instead increasing his disturbing power base.
The mayor is supposed to be running this beautiful city, London, with a £24 billion budget. He hasn't got time to do anything else. If he does go into the Lords, then the only hope we have is that he would then resign and not be mayor, and we'll have another mayoral contest. But I suspect he wouldn't. He'd keep that, go into the Lords. I mean, it could be the fact that Keir Starmer knows that Khan wants to be the PM, and it might be a way of getting him out of the way, because if you're in the Lords, you can't be PM.
That's an interesting analogy. I hadn't thought about that one from Susan Hull.
Now, you'll remember Susan has valiantly spent months trying to get Khan to admit that there are thousands of Pakistani Muslim rape gangs operating in Khan's London to no avail.
I asked you this question last week and you found every which way but not to answer it. Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
To avoid any misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes, if you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for what's a misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If she could spell it out, I can answer.
I've just spelled sort it out. Are you not listening? It's the sort of gangs that groom young girls at a young age for sex. Exactly how much clearer do you want me to be?
I mean, totally disgusting. We all know that. But even more disgusting is that Khan and his Greater London Authority is now paying Woke ITV host Charlene White, remember the hard left loose women, the first voted off I'm a Celebrity because she's so hated and she plays into grievance politics so much and is clearly a DEI hire, by the way. She's been paid to host something called People's Question Time and is now taking the same approach. Watch.
Talking about something such as grooming gangs, though, that also needs to come with facts, figures and data. Otherwise, it will just be seen as hearsay. It's very important. No. My point being, Assembly Member Susan Hall, when we're talking about crime and figures and serious crimes such as grooming gangs, I'm not saying it's something that shouldn't be raised, but things like that should also come with data and facts.
And we need to be talking about it, Charlene.
No, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be talking about it.
The police are re-looking at thousands of cases.
But no, then you give all I was asking was for a number.
9,000.
That's all I was asking for was for a number.
9,000 cases are being looked at again. So please don't tell me it's not out there, because I have spoken to the victims, and I'm sorry, Charlene, if you had, you wouldn't have said that. It
no,
is absolutely heartbreaking.
I have, but my point is that when we're talking about data and facts, it's very important, especially when it comes to crime, that we do include figures with that as well.
Absolutely disgusting. How is that allowed to happen? How can a mainstream TV presenter effectively be operating as a political operative for Khan? And I've been in touch with Susan Hall overnight, who says one of the issues is that the problem is, in London, there are no stats on Pakistani Muslim rape gangs because it is rarely officially discussed and it hasn't been flagged as grooming. No wonder Charlene White is Labour's choice. As Chris Rose wrote about this entire situation, Keir Starmer once promised to abolish the House of Lords. Now he is set to give Sadiq Khan a peerage. The same Sadiq Khan who pretended that he doesn't know what a rape gang is, followed by the Met Police confirming that they're dealing with many cases, an absolute travesty. And Howard Cox of Advance UK added, "This shows the corrupt way this government operates to favour their own to stay in power, to lying, fraudulent, treasonous politicians working together for themselves, not for you." But what's interesting to me is that Khan is actually serving another purpose for Slippery Starmer. He is now attempting to bring down the tit whisperer, Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader who is, of course, in the London Assembly and who Khan this week roasted over his hypnotism lie. Watch.
That was a lot of words, and it sounds like you're waving the white flag on Heathrow expansion. You talked about your officers are making a case. What are you specifically doing, particularly in public, with this government that you have a clear link to say we don't want aviation expansion in London?
I literally said 3 minutes ago publicly, I'm against Heathrow.
You're saying that
expansion.
to me, but what conversations are you having with the Prime Minister?
I mean, this is a public meeting. I mean, I'm surprised the member who's always clipping them doesn't realise that. This is a public meeting, and I object to Heathrow being expanded. As I've made quite clear, I want a better Heathrow, not a bigger one. I've also, in the past, used all the tools in my toolkit to resist and expansion. I appreciate this is a bandwagon he wants to jump onto, but I've been driving this bandwagon for some time, and I'll carry on being in the driving seat, driving this bandwagon, in an electric, zero-emission bandwagon.
I mean, it's quite a stretch to say that the Green Party are jumping on a bandwagon in opposing aviation expansion.
Well, Chair, look, some people, challenge decisions, by bringing legal cases, which I've done, by lobbying publicly, which I've done. Others do it by hypnosis.
It's a pretty debasing of democracy there, Mr. Mayor.
I don't know who's worse, actually. Both would destroy our country. Now, Nigel Farage last night mocked Slippery Starmer's desperate failures when he's off script.
He did what he always does. He simply reads off a script that he's been given. He's like a pigeon in Trafalgar Square, I mean.
But Slippery Starmer doesn't need a script when he's alongside his MSM mate Bess Rigby, who has been giving him the easiest possible ride. In fact, she's literally operating as a Downing Street PR operative in this softball interview on her Sly News man-hating podcast called Electoral Dysfunction.
There's a clear difference, therefore, of opinion between me and President Trump.
He's insulted you, he's demeaned you, he's poked fun at you. You are the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And for many people in the UK, many people listening to this podcast or watching it, insulting you is like insulting our country. Do you understand why some people feel like that?
There's undoubtedly been, some hard decisions over the last few weeks. I have been clear I'm not going to join the war. There's a clear difference, therefore, of opinion between me and President Trump. My own view is that a lot of what is said and done has been to put pressure on me to change my mind. But I'm not going to do so because I'm the British Prime Minister and I have to act in the British national interest.
Do you
and
think
I will
he
always act in the
underestimated
British
you?
national interest.
Do you think he underestimated you because you'd worked really hard at the relationship? I had followed you around. I remember being in the White House and you came out and you were pleased because he'd backed NATO and Article 5. He'd signalled he was going to do a good deal for trade. You were really personally proud that you felt like you had found this connection. You tried to accommodate him. Do you think he took that as weakness from you?
Well, I wanted a good relationship. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I still want a good relationship. As we work our way through this, I'm sure that is possible. But I want to be equally clear. I'm not going to waver on this. I'm not going to back down.
I mean, Sly News can get fucked, seriously. They are absolutely reprehensible. And I've got an example, actually, which I think is going to stun you today. So in a story which has quite rightly horrified patriots, an Afghan illegal who crossed the channel has been jailed for abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl. Yet in its coverage, Sly News decided it was far more important to talk about the impact on an invisible far right.
Others told me that they were actually deeply uncomfortable about the fact that some far-right groups were using this to push what they described as a political agenda. So whilst this trial is over, the debate has been ignited. That debate around safety, about public trust in police and immigration is far from settled.
Is that type of coverage why the MSM is dead? Of course there is a political agenda. That man who abducted and raped the 12-year-old was only here because of a political decision to allow our borders to be invaded every single day by foreign invading rapists, terrorists, and murderers. So the rest of the world is currently looking on in horror about the reality of what's going on here thanks to social media, which Slippery Starmer, by the way, is now determined to censor. Like the convicted terrorist Shahib Butt, who is running to be the mayor to be elected to council in Birmingham. Watch.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do not take the Jews or Christians as your friends and protectors. People say, oh, what you say, we can't make friends. You understand the verse, understand the context. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that these people, the disbelievers, will never be satisfied with you. No matter how much you bend over for them, they will never, ever be satisfied. So stick with your deen, stick with the Muslims, and for good or for worse, hold your ground. Yep.
And then there's this from Tommy Robinson, who posted, this is what the inbreds of Bradford think of their host nation and people. For some reason, this low IQ pleb thinks we brought Pakistani Muslims to Britain. Send them back to their 7th century sandpits. Watch.
Fuck them all. Fuck reform. Fuck all of them, yeah. They're fucking pussies. Yeah.
Why do you think they are onto the Pakistani so much?
Because they hate, because they can't be used, bro. They got no culture, they got nothing to them.
What culture have they got?
Beans and toast, cuz. They're fucking England's national dish is fucking chicken tikka, cuz. They've taken everything from us, yeah. They've robbed out of India and all that shit. Yeah. They've not given nothing back, yeah. And they're trying to get us gone. They brought us here, bro. Then they're saying, oh, we shouldn't have come here, go back to your own country. They brought us here. It don't make sense, guys.
100%, man.
Then there was this viral moment from GB News star Stephen Edgington, who interviewed a leftist white man with suicidal empathy, saying he doesn't notice the change in English demographics, yet look behind him during the interview.
Have you noticed a change in sort of demographics, the people who live here and so on?
Not particularly. I don't see it hasn't changed in any great deal, to be honest with you.
Tommy Robinson responded, insane viewing, as residents of Newham, London are asked if it's getting worse because of mass immigration. They all hate it. The longer they've been there, the more. The only English person says it's fine, but he doesn't care as he's emigrating. But compare that to how the patriotic migrant feels.
Have you noticed a big change in the area in the last few years because of immigration, people coming from around the world?
Oh, don't talk about immigration, my friend. What I've seen around here is unbelievable. They come here. I mean, I was a migrant myself. I came with my mother. My mother died of cervical cancer, and I've been here ever since. That was an unfortunate thing to happen in my part of life. But I've been here since then. But I've seen what migration do here. You can just walk down the road and you'll see a ton of them in a bookie shop all day long, hustling people. What can I say? They are not respecting the law. I'm grateful to the British government for being here. And I've been here best part of 66 years now.
And that migrant has actually been mugged himself.
On the immigrants that have come here recently, do they speak English? Are they integrating into English life?
No, I don't think so. Most of them, I'll be honest with you, most of them they come here to get what they want to get. But with the immigration thing is, they need to respect the law of the land. I walk down the street every day and I get snipped drugs. Just that street across the road, I was mugged there twice.
And then there's Lenny Henry, who's just won a diversity award for wanting us to pay £18 trillion in reparations. Do you remember this week Rupert Lowe, the leader of Restore Britain, said, in a world of Lenny Henrys, be a John Cleese. Well, now the Fawlty Towers legend has posted against Lenny Henry, writing, I suspect dear Lenny thinks that Britain invented slavery and that the pyramids were presumably built by volunteers. Watch Lenny Henry's painful speech.
Over here, Nigel Farage hates DEI more than he hates going to Clapham. He says we need to get rid of diversity in hiring and go back to a merit-based system. But here's what I know. We fought slavery and won. We fought apartheid and won. We fought Clause 28 and won. These people will never defeat us because they'll never share our passion. For us, the fight for diversity and inclusion is personal. It's our lived experience. For them, it's just part of the grift. Another way of making some quick cash by exploiting people's grievances. They don't have the commitment to make lasting change, but we do.
Let's see, Lenny. Kelly J. Keane raged at that millionaire unfunny comedian who, as a black man, moans about the threat of the return of some sort of meritocracy. Fellow actor Matthew Marsden, formerly of Coronation Street, added it is never enough. Lenny has had a terrific career and was universally adored by most Brits, married a white woman, still complains. And the cancelled actor Lawrence Fox responded thoughtfully, posting, what is his thank you for these opportunities? Indeed, where is another notorious guilt trader Adol's Ray's gratitude for the opportunities, gongs and titles the British people have given him, coming from the best part of the soul of this incredible nation? To hate us. That's the thanks we get. They hide behind this stolen word diversity and its new confected meaning in which colour of skin trumps everything, especially the content of your character. And they hold award ceremonies where they continue to harangue and bully the very people who have paid for their lunch for far too long. I'm glad Sir Lenny Henry is worried that DEI is going the way of the trans madness, consigned to an embarrassing flicker in our nation's history. I'm glad that very soon there will be no racist diversity awards, and with their fading memory, every decent-minded Brit can take a look in the mirror and remind themselves that awarding ungrateful babies for throwing their toys out of the pram isn't the quick cure we were told it was. Fuck you, Sir Lenny, and all who sit on golden thrones telling the plebs they should applaud louder for being hated. Game over DEI, game over Lenny. We want our country back. White, black, and all the colours in between, it doesn't matter. We want to hope and come together for our country. We hate diversity of anything other than opinion. It's what made our country great and will make it great again. We want to be released from the spiteful arrogance of ungrateful, talentless oafs like yourself. We are British and we are proud. Join in or sod off. And I think that is the reason why Restore Britain is already at half the vote share of both the Conservatives and Labour, as Wootton said, an unprecedented time in British politics, which, as Restore leader Rupert Lowe points out, comes without, quote, a fair word in the media. And as Connor Tomlinson summed up, as promised, Restore Britain will ban all immigration from India, Pakistan, and other third world countries. Millions of legal migrants already here will be encouraged to leave. All illegal migrants will be made to leave. No more, no thanks. Millions must go. And Connor Tomlinson is here now. Connor, what do you make of Sadiq Khan being made a lord by slippery Starmer?
Well, Dan, if Starmer didn't get rid of the hereditary peers, how else would they be able to reward failure and confer patronage onto their cronies and the enablers of the destruction of our country? I think Susan Hall raises a really interesting point there, that it may be an exercise in seeing off a leadership challenge from Khan, who is internally popular within the party, much to the confusion of the entire public, who, besides his Muslim client groups and people who want free stuff, quite rightfully hate his guts for what he's done to our capital city. But it's more than likely that he will just go for another term of mayor, fourth term consecutively, because his party and the Conservatives have ethnically gerrymandered our capital city to the extent of where it's his own little fiefdom of resentful dependence. The most interesting thing for Starmer is that not that he faces a leadership challenge from Khan, but that he seems to face a leadership challenge from Shabana Mahmood, who is obviously posturing as the sensible voice in the room on immigration and is very tight with Tony Blair these days, and seemingly as well with Tony Blair's sponsor, Larry Ellison of Oracle. And I think Angela Rayner can spot this, because Angela Rayner has been denouncing Shabana Mahmood as un-British for her pretend immigration reforms. So I do wonder if Starmer is in fact giving Sadiq Khan a position in the Lords and a possible cabinet position, if he decides not to run for mayor, to shore up his own base within the party, to see off a progressive leadership challenge following the May elections from the Angela Rayner flank. The only thing that would suggest otherwise is, of course, as we'll be discussing later, Dan, Angela Rayner started an odious new podcast, which I'm sure positively tens of people will listen to, as Global puts it on every billboard in London. So if she thought she was ascending the career ladder, perhaps she wouldn't be doing that, but I can't rule anything out at this point.
And Connor, we see how the mainstream media is complicit in all of this, right? So you've got Charlene White not even allowing really conversation about Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. She's like, where's the evidence? It's like, well, the evidence has been covered up in London. That's the whole point. But the Metropolitan Police are now finally years late investigating. You've got Beth Rigby giving a softball interview to Slippery Starmer. You've got the Sly News correspondent talking about the far right after an Afghan illegal migrant is sent to jail for 15 years for raping and abducting a 12-year-old. But the problem is, Sly can't actually cover up what's going on the ground. Because I don't know if you saw what happened when they were on the road with Ahmed Yaqub, the Islamist lawyer in Birmingham this week. But in case you missed it, let me just show you this.
He was speaking to voters and our cameras were still rolling. We heard him repeating conspiracy theories widely acknowledged to be anti-Semitic.
The thing is, the Zionists control everything, and that's what happens. They try to silence us.
Sky News approached Mr Yaqub again after uncovering this. He told us he stands by his comments. He did not think they were anti-Semitic, and it was something he said regularly. Yaqub isn't running for election himself, but he's playing a key role in trying to get his candidates elected. On social media, he's vocal about the war in Gaza, and last week he was arrested at a religious protest for racially abusing a police officer, an allegation.
And as Chris Rose posted, Ahmed to Sky News, yes, my campaign is all about the cost of living. Ahmed to local Muslims, Zionists seek to control everything. If sectarian Muslim candidates are this anti-Semitic when cameras in air, imagine how bad they are when they're not. But I think the biggest issue for me, Connor, is if you just take the Sky News coverage on the whole, they're not actually prepared to go there when it comes to Islamism.
No, and again, Dan, I'd like to reiterate Islam, because the reason that they're so focused on anti-Semitism is because they seem to think that the only thing dividing us are the sort of excess fringes, sort of like English identity that refuses to be made so plastic that anyone from Rishi Sunak to Shabana Mahmood can identify as English, and also the least... Well, those with the least impulse control in the Muslim community, let's put it that way, who are honest in their belief that the Jews are behind everything and that Judgment Day will only come, as the Hadith say, when the Jews are massacred for their unwillingness to submit to Allah. I'm really glad we've imported the sort of 7th century ethnic tribalism of the Middle East into our country. So Sky News focuses on the far right and Islamism rather than Islam to create a bogeyman that if they didn't exist, otherwise the premise being we would all get along, we'd all be singing John Lennon's Imagine, living in a post-racial utopia, and that's just not the case. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care if Mr. Yaqub has a poor opinion of the state of Israel, he shouldn't be in my country, the voters shouldn't be in my country, these people should not be practicing Pakistani Muslim tribal clan politics in my country regardless of what they think of Jews. And again, as you said, Sky News will never go there because their entire project is to keep the delusional liberal fantasy of an egalitarian multicultural utopia fixed and on rails, no matter how rapidly we are hurtling towards disaster. And so they just have to lie. Fortunately, Dan, with shows like yours and mine, the Lotus Eaters, etc., those lies are exposed every day, and it's becoming more and more obvious to the people who just want to take their country back.
Breaking today, the shock defection of a Labour Hartlepool councillor to Reform UK on stage in Sunderland is completely collapsing and proving, unfortunately, that Reform UK seems to be the new uni party. But Nigel Farage was incredibly happy about this moment. Watch.
We've got some joining us who were previously Conservatives. Some joining us who've never been part of any political party or movement at all. But I'm beginning to see an increasing flow of people joining us from the Labour Party, and that is significant. And tonight I want to introduce Aaron Roy, elected as a Labour councillor in Hartlepool, but I have a feeling in a couple of minutes he may no longer be a Labour councillor, he might just be one of ours.
Now, Basil the Great immediately revealed that Councillor Aaron Roy is an Indian national. And during his first speech, and I have to say that the Reform UK people in the audience, they were very loyal. I mean, they pretended to love all of his embrace of the whole BAME thing. Watch.
And a little bit of fact, I'm the first BAME councillor in Hartlepool's history. And thank you. And I've always carried my responsibility of representation. But representation must mean more than just your presence. It must be action, it must be courage, and it must mean standing firm in your principles, even when it's not easy. My ideology has not changed. My values have not changed. My commitment to the people of Hartlepool has not changed.
Yeah, and that's the issue. The issue actually isn't your colour, it is your values and it is your politics, and it proves, unfortunately, that Reform UK really isn't a Conservative party of the right. As Georgina Holyfield revealed, he was at a Left Alliance meeting a few days ago speaking to your party and the Green Party. Sounds like he would have flip-flopped whichever direction saved his seat. Zero integrity. And Lady Rebecca, who's done a lot of research on this, added, is Nigel Farage purposely trying to destroy Reform UK? It said he is strongly aligned with pro-multiculturalism and diversity. As Hartlepool's first BAME councillor and former BAME officer, he has championed equality, diversity and inclusion using sport, including founding a BAME football club and hosting the UK's first Tri-Nations Kabaddi Cup to promote cultural inclusion, youth empowerment, community cohesion, and celebrating diversity across ethnic groups. He is an Indian immigrant who settled in the UK and rose to local office. In short, prior to this defection, Aaron Roy's record fits like a pro-multiculturalism and pro-diversity stance typical of many Labour councillors, with a focus on inclusion and integrating communities through grassroots initiatives. So are Reform just becoming a 100% uni party? Have Reform completely lost the plot? Well, Connor Tomlinson, our guest today, believes so. He posted on this, the fact Reform think this is something to celebrate is why they have declined and plateaued in the polls. People don't want the uni party rebuilt by gathering its refugees under a teal gazebo. They want an alternative to the establishment, which is why Restore Britain exists. Reform UK run Indian and Bangladeshi nationals as council candidates. Restore Britain will ban legal migration from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The choice is clear. And this choice is now really hitting Reform UK's base. Reform UK is actually struggling to find enough candidates to run in May. And the latest, the Barking and Dagenham Reform election hopeful Lewis Holmes, has left the party saying he didn't want to join Tory 2.0. Watch his damning resignation video.
Good afternoon, Barking and Dagenham. It is with a heavy heart that I have resigned my Reform UK membership and ceased all involvement with Reform UK in Barking and Dagenham. I joined Reform UK. I didn't join Tory 2.0. I joined Reform over 2 years ago. I joined because I hated the state of British politics and the traitorous politicians that are responsible for affecting our everyday lives. Most importantly, I detested what Labour have done to Barking and Dagenham. They have ruined our once great and envied borough. They focused on pandering to sectarianism, as have the Greens. They are not putting the interests of Barking and Dagenham residents first, and they haven't been for decades. Labour will tell you that they're the party of the working class. But whose working class are they talking about? Because it certainly isn't the British.
And the thing is, Nigel Farage keeps on playing the mainstream media game. And it's not working for him. As this car crash interview with Channel 4 News political correspondent Paul McNamara proves last night.
I worried that you might misremember this, so I actually dug out some of those leaflets from last year. So here's one of yours, your big smiling face there. Cut your taxes.
Yes, with Stop the Boats and Scrap Net Zero. They are national party policies. They are not specific to
Okay,
local
here's
council.
another one. This one from Lancashire. It's you're not smiling there, serious face.
Good Lord.
Reform UK stands for real change, putting local people first. We fight for lower council tax.
Yeah. And we've given it. We've given it. We've given lower council taxes than everybody else.
You've raised it.
Sunderland is just over the road, where we've increased council tax by less than the rate of inflation. Look, you can split hairs on this if you
I'm
want
not splitting hairs on it. This one's from Kent.
Yep.
Right at the top there. You can change the way Kent County Council spends your money.
Yes.
Cut your taxes, big smiley face.
Yeah, along with freeze. Look, there are confusions in all local elections between national and local issues, and I get that. But
Can you see how
ever,
some people might look at this?
No, any journalists that are looking back at things and trying to find an argument.
Really, you can't think that there is some sympathy for people who thought this local leaflet with Kent right at the top and cut your taxes.
If I was living over the road here in Sunderland, I'd be very pleased at a 1.99% rise in council tax.
All councils can do
indeed.
is, the only tax they can lower is council tax.
And we've lowered
jacked it up.
and we haven't increased it, in that case, even to the level of inflation.
Connor Tomlinson, what is going on at Reform UK?
Well, nobody's buying that bullshit. I think Reform have walked themselves down an ideological cul-de-sac of where they have conceded to all of the insults that the mainstream media and other parties have thrown at them in order to see them either acquiesce or capsize. And because they've given those words power, like racist and far right, they've remade themselves in the image of what the other party would want them to be so that they don't get called those names. Now, one, they're going to get called those names anyway, because that's the point, just to destroy you. But two, by doing that, you've become indistinguishable from the uniparty. They're allowing MI5 to vet their candidates when MI5 is now full of diversity hires. They proudly release that they have summer diversity internship drives every single year. So the people vetting your candidates for what is and isn't extreme think that leaving the ECHR or reducing immigration or even stopping illegal immigration, even a little bit, is itself far right. And now, Dan, as you've just laid out with their new Labour Council defector, Aaron Roy, dear Lord, the guy moved over from India 10 years ago. He is still an Indian national. Reminder, by the way, Reform is promising, after losing the Gorton and Denton by-election, to stop Commonwealth citizens from voting. So their own councillor now, Aaron Roy, is a Commonwealth Indian citizen who not only can vote, and will have that vote taken away by Reform UK, but presumably will now stand as a candidate at the local elections, despite not being a British national and despite Reform policy not allowing him to either stand or vote. It makes zero sense. It's like when they're running, I think it's in Portsmouth, the Bangladeshi student who has said he wants to go and work in Dubai and then return to Bangladesh someday. Oh, but just so he can add it to his CV in the meantime, because this is clearly, I'm sorry to say, a sort of Indian striver mindset where everything is about what you can put on your LinkedIn. He wants to stand for the party that's most likely to allow him to be a councillor for a little bit of time so that he can farm his Izzat and go home. The interesting thing about Mr. Roy here, not only is he an NHS nurse, because, you know, of course, he's literally another member of the professional managerial class, a member of the ever-growing state, not only was he at that Green and Your Party alliance meeting very recently, but he, in 2024, became, as he says on his own website, Hartlepool's first ever non-white BAME councillor, and then, in 2024, he founded Mariners United as a BAME football club. So the same party that apparently, as Lenny Henry has been freaking out, wants to abolish DEI, has just accepted an Indian national who is proud to be a representative of DEI and hates white people so much he excludes them from his football team. Reform are not only the uniparty, they are now the diversity party. And so if Reform is embracing the same candidates, the same rhetoric as the Lib Dems, the Greens, the Conservatives and Labour, that means that they are part of the establishment. And so the only anti-establishment option is Restore Britain. Restore Britain didn't need to exist if Reform hadn't actively denounced, ostracised and alienated not just Rupert Lowe, not just Restore's surrogates and supporters, but their very own base. And now I wouldn't be shocked to see them underperform at the local elections and for more Reform supporters to drift over to Restore as they start to realise this isn't the party they wanted to support.
And then this afternoon, Connor, we get perhaps the least surprising news of the day from the Greater Manchester Police, who say, oh, no. Despite the independent volunteers literally seeing it with their own eyes on the day of the Gorton and Denton by-election, there was no family voting whatsoever. This is the statement released by the Greater Manchester Police. We've concluded our investigation into last month's Gorton and Denton by-election, finding no evidence of any intent to influence or refrain any person from voting. The police said officers spoke to 4 volunteers present at polling stations on the day of the by-election who saw some instances of more than one voter going into a booth at the same time and instances of people looking over the shoulder of voters. This may have happened 32 times across 15 polling stations, the police said, based on the witness accounts. However, the observers do not allege any verbal instructions or physical contact that indicated one person was directing or coercing another regarding how to vote. Greater Manchester Police added this is a crucial part of the legislation to prove such an offence was committed. Are you buying that, Connor?
Actually, you know what, Dan? Yes. And do you know why? Because otherwise, what are we saying? Muslim women were going to go vote Matt Goodwin? They were that persuaded by his Alan Partridge routine on top of the Brexit bus? No. Pretty much every single Muslim in Gorton wanted to vote for the Green Party because the Green Party said, we're the party for Muslims to take away white people's stuff. The Green Party are basically the party of Brave New World's sexual and drug morality and the camp of the Saints in their anti-white hatred. So I think authentically, even if Muslim women weren't being shepherded to the polls and guided because, you know, the niqab is obscuring the peripheral vision, they were going to vote Green anyway. And it is suicidal for Reform to have thought not only could they win over the Muslim vote, which is something that Nigel Farage told the Daily Express on the Gorton and Denton campaign trail, and then they got only 9% of the non-British vote total with a infinitesimal small amount of Muslims, but there are only about 1,800 non-white British non-Muslim minorities in Gorton and Denton anyway, and that Goodwin lost by about 4,000 to 5,000 votes. So for all this hugging a Sikh and telling Spiked Online that Hong Kongers are actually more British than me, Charlie Downs and Harrison Pitt, he lost pitifully, and that is because Reform refused to learn. You are meant to represent the indigenous, left behind, white British majority, mainly the working class in the Red Wall. And if you look like a party for foreigners, if you pander to the hypothetical moderate Muslim vote, who weirdly enough don't want to vote for you, then you're going to alienate them more than you're going to make inroads with minorities. And since Reform refused to do that and refused to learn that lesson and keep shaving off allies to their right, instead I think it's Restore Britain's job to do it.
What do you make of the Matt Goodwin controversy this week, Connor, in regards to his book? He has now had to admit that there are mistakes in the book, but he says the wider point still stands. Of course, I've been highly critical of Goodwin, not just for the book, but also the fact that he seems to be saying people like you, Connor, young people like you, people under 30, who effectively choose not to support Reform UK and go with Restore Britain, have ruined their entire careers and lives and now no longer have anything to contribute to society.
Yeah, he's clearly rehearsed that line, Dan, because he's been using it on Winston Marshall's podcast, which Winston found hilarious, but, you know, he's a Nepo baby guiding Restoring to Downing Street anyway, so I don't take his opinion very seriously. He also repeated it on the New Culture Forum, which I think is actually a disgrace to Peter Whittle, because Peter Whittle, were he still alive, would be furious that his platform, and actually his show, which Emma has inherited, was used to make veiled threats to myself, Harrison, and Charlie, all men that he was quite fond of, and then he repeated it on Peter McCormack's podcast, and Peter McCormack wasn't having any of it, and if you look at the comments, it's gone very bad for Matt. All I can say is in terms of relevance or having a promising career, I've never used AI to write any of my articles. I've never used a ghostwriter to actually write my own Substack. Matt has used it often. I would never allow a speech or an article to go out with my name on it or to be delivered that I haven't written myself. So clearly Matt and I have different standards for integrity there. As far as my career, okay, I don't care if I don't get printed in the Telegraph or Unheard or the Daily Mail. I don't care if I don't get a Reform safe seat. I don't care if I don't get invited onto various podcasts that consider me beyond the pale, because it's not about my career, Matt. Like, do you think I've got the police showing up at my door for politically motivated reasons because I want a comfortable career? Do you think I'm in this so that I can get, you know, a seat in the House of Lords, or I can publish an AI written book and make a quick buck? No, I'm in this to fix the country for my future children, actually, and so I don't care if you disapprove of me. I care about the sacrifices I make and getting the job done. And finally, Dan, sorry, it seems that Mac's own career is dwindling. I mean, he's got Tim Montgomery sharpening the blade for his back. He's discredited himself with the use of AI and allowing hallucinated quotes and the Google summary of Roger Scruton's work to go out in his book unchecked. And so I can sleep soundly at night knowing that even if I have Matt's disapproval, I have my integrity. And the same can't be said to him. I know the lads in Restore, who have always been my friends, will always have my back. And it doesn't seem at this point that he's got a lot of allies either in or outside of Reform. So I'm pretty comfortable.
Connor Tomlinson, what happened to you this week was so horrendous, and I think does prove actually that not just the left, but also so-called people on the right are now using the most dastardly tactics to try and destroy people with links to Restore Britain. I know for a fact that there are lots of WhatsApp groups going around where Reform UK people are entirely focused, by the way, on bringing down their rivals to the right. So It's not that they are focused on the likes of Polanski and the Greens. They are more focused on their rivals to the right. And what happened to you, I find it impossible to believe that there is not some connection. But you posted earlier this week, just had the police show up at my door investigating an anonymous domestic abuse and coercive control allegation made against me. 2 officers spoke to my wife and concluded it was malicious and politically motivated. The police were professional and apologetic. I won't share their identities when they were just doing their job. They shouldn't have their time wasted like that. But this is a new low. Disagree with me about anything you like, but leave my family out of it. And quite wisely, Connor, you did record the end of the discussion with the police where they did admit that they believe that this is politically motivated in some way. Watch.
Are you recording?
Yeah, may as well just back up.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. I've turned mine off just so you know.
That's fine.
Yeah, I do believe it's to be malicious, if I'm being honest with you. The lady has explained a few things to me which would make me believe it is.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's just you know, whether it's my job or some sort of disgruntled ex-friend or something.
Connor, this was chilling, really, really horrible. Can you talk me through first what actually happened? Like, what time of day was it? And were these uniformed police officers turning up unexpected at your door?
Yeah, Dan. So it was recorded on 2 body cams, Ring doorbell, and then my phone. I decided not to disclose the identity of the police officers because they were both very reasonable lads. And the fact that they have to do these calls, clearly, as we've discussed time and time again with the growth of Muslim households in this country, is still an important thing. So I don't want to punish them for doing their jobs in this instance. And they were very quick to say it was politically motivated and malicious. So they were very reasonable. But at 10:30 in the morning, 2 police officers knocked on my door, cuffs and truncheons on their belts. And I opened it expecting, them to have a printout of all my greatest hits from Twitter, or to be delivering a Hope Not Hate Oscar from the State of Hate report in person. Unfortunately not. They said they had received they were doing a welfare check, and it was a call about some sort of domestic issue. And I asked them, because I'd previously had 2 police officers turn up at my door at 3 in the morning one time, and I didn't publicise this, but it was for the woman who had lived here before because her daughter suffered from mental health issues, and they had gotten the wrong address, so they updated it in their file. So I just said, is this for this woman? And they said, no, it's for you, sir. We've had an anonymous report of coercive control in the household. Is there anyone else in with you? My wife was upstairs. She's just gotten back from the gym. So I said, my wife's here. Just give us some moment to get dressed. So I went upstairs, told her. She was very shocked. Invited them in. They took us into separate rooms and interviewed us, asking us pretty much the same questions. They'd asked us, for example, if we'd ever argued and I'd ever locked her out the house for an extended period. Because one very strange detail that this person had fabricated, this anonymous person, was that we had argued and I'd locked her out the house for a week, which is very odd and has never happened. We don't know, by the way, if this person either knew my wife's name or knew my address. That isn't necessarily a feature of filing this anonymous report. So they could have just made it up whole cloth. It could be someone on the internet who just didn't like something I said on your show or a live stream, for all I know, Dan. And at the conclusion of the 2 interviews, the police officer who I recorded said, look, I'm going to be frank with you, we think this is malicious and politically motivated, because they walked in and next to the door is this very studio. He saw it and he said, oh, do you do YouTube then? They had no idea who I was. And I just explained, yeah, I do some news reporting and things like that. So having put 2 and 2 together, they said, it's probably politically motivated. It's either a former friend of your wife's who feels disgruntled because they feel that she has changed her political opinions and is no longer affiliating with them and therefore blames you, or it's probably someone on the internet that just doesn't like your opinions and has used this anonymous domestic abuse reporting feature to lash out and try and intimidate you into silence. I've sought the advice of Harry Miller, of Fair Cop, a friend of mine and a good man, and he said, try to file using the police's lapel numbers so you can follow up with the exact incident. Try to file a complaint of malicious harassment using false police reports. The Met Police will be obliged to look into it and address it, and if they do launch an investigation, hopefully we can find out the identity of who this person is, whether I know them or not.
Yeah, this is the problem, you see. They currently have anonymity. So it could be completely politically motivated, yet you are not allowed to know, which is a massive flaw in the system. And so, Connor, look, we're saying right from the start, right? We don't know. We don't know. As you say, this could be a crazy person on the internet. It could be someone connected to your wife. It could be someone on the left. However, I am hearing much more and more, Connor, and I'm sure you are too, about some of the techniques that are being used by Reform UK supporters against especially people who are connected to Restore Britain. I mean, you've been very open about the fact that you're a member of the party. You're not on the payroll of the party, but you're a member of the party. And do you think there's any possibility that they could be involved in some way, that this could be from someone trying to bring down Restore Britain?
Well, I'm not going to attribute blame without evidence, though I am not surprised that people are concerned that that might be a possibility, Dan, because of course Reform UK have set that standard by reporting Rupert Lowe to the police alongside those mendacious bullying accusations about people in his office trying to conflate Rupert with those claims and trying to systematically destroy his reputation using a false police report of threats of violence against Zia Youssef 3 months after the supposed incident, for which the Crown Prosecution Service and the police could find no evidence and therefore couldn't prosecute. And Rupert, on that false accusation, had his house raided, underwent a lengthy investigation, had his property confiscated, his shotguns taken away, returned to him in that famous wheelbarrow image that now Nigel Farage himself has been photoshopped into. So they have set the standard of weaponising the law against their political opponents. I even saw when Restore Britain was registering as a political party with the Electoral Commission that emails were going in from Reform UK supporters, or at least we must say, people posing as Reform UK supporters potentially to sow discord online between the two parties, because of course there are always anonymous troublemakers that try to do that, complaining that the Electoral Commission should not authenticate Restore Britain as a political party because they were too far right. They were the real racists and all sort of other things. So could it be this disgruntled crazy person of any political party that thinks that because I have supported Restore Britain as a political party, that by sabotaging or intimidating me by proxy, it could waylay Restore Britain? It's a possibility. It's just as probable at this point that it's a disgruntled ex-friend of my wife's or a crazy ex-girlfriend of mine, because the list is just as long, frankly, as some disgruntled Reform UK supporters. But I just want to say, Dan, look, I keep my wife very anonymous for this exact reason. As I said in that post, look, go after me all you like for my opinions, but don't bring the law into it and don't bring my family into it. You've met my wife. She's lovely, wouldn't harm a fly. She's the likable one out of the two of us. And even
she is adorable.
Even though it was a surprising and stressful ordeal, we can both handle it. But I want to say that politics has grown really coarse, really dirty, really dastardly, and I am under no illusion that this is the last of it. Like, pretty much every government department in this country, thanks to Boris Johnson, is allowed to break the law in order to sabotage political parties if they're doing something that's not in the national interest. That includes, for example, the Green Party for saying they want to leave NATO, or Restore Britain for saying they want to stop legal migration from nations like India or Pakistan, because the OBR and the Treasury and the Bank of England have decreed immigration to be a net economic good. So it's not just going to be dirty tricks in the media and names called by other parties and their supporters. It's not just going to be, the police sent to my door, or God forbid the door of my friends in the party and Rupert Lowe's. It's going to be the state, it's going to be the intelligence agencies. And so we have to be prepared for this, and we have to steel ourselves, have some courage, and respond to everything with Rupert's characteristic, I don't care.
Do you think that Reform is much more worried about Restore than they let on? Because senior people in the party certainly like to say, Restore, we're not concerned at all, they're not going to impact us, indeed they might even help us. But their actions don't seem to bear out that position.
I know this for a fact, Dan, because I'm sure that as a critic of Reform, but on the right, you've received similar texts and emails from people not just in Reform's local branches, those that are still left and dwindling, not just Reform student groups, but from Millbank Tower. I've had people working at Reform HQ in multiple departments contacting me saying they have been rebuked for discussing my tweets in the office or having them on screen, for they've said to me that they are having candidate applications withdrawn after the launch of Restore Britain, and they are having to conduct active outreach to their base to encourage people to stand, because lots of the base, as we've seen from recent polling, hold Rupert in similar esteem to Nigel Farage, and they prefer the policies of Restore Britain because they want Reform to adopt those same policies, but they're busily being promised by Zia Youssef and then denounced just this week by Matt Goodwin, who's saying mass deportations are too extreme. So, what's the point of Reform? Reform's own messaging, the very unpopular admission of conservative defectors, primarily Nadim Zahawi, who they were going to appoint as Shadow Foreign Secretary, again, I know that for a fact from Reform insiders, and withheld because of the violent reaction from their own supporters in their own base against the idea. They are losing candidates, they are losing staff members, they have quietly let people go because internally they've been critical of the direction of travel of the party, and they're losing supporters. And the only thing that I think stands in the way of a larger number of Reform supporters moving over to Restore Britain, because aside from a few people that are personally loyal to Nigel Farage and to the brand, I consider Reform and Restore supporters to be a Venn diagram, almost a circle. Like, we're the same family, we want the same country at the end of it, and apart from those that make things personal and go outside the remit of what is actually electoral politics, I think we're all on the same team. I think all they need is the permission and the security to say that abandoning Reform for Restore will not hand the country over to a more nefarious force. And I would only say to them, if Reform are populating themselves with that nefarious force and have actively ostracised people that you like and listen to, like Rupert Lowe or Charlie Downs or Harrison Pitt or myself, then consider the direction of travel is now locked in. Reform will become the uniparty, they will continue to denounce mass deportations, and anyone to their right is too extreme, whereas Restore Britain won't reciprocate in those character attacks or that use of the law improperly. They will commit to ending and reversing mass illegal and legal migration, and just look at the characters involved. I think they're the more trustworthy men to carry it out. And so we can only ask at this point for you to put your faith in the party that's going to do what it says.
The Angela Rayner show is finally coming, and it's being produced by the leftists behind the fake news agents. The fake news agents, by the way, who are still so obsessed with the former Prime Minister Liz Truss that Lewis Goodall is stalking her on the other side of the world. I'm going to show you what went down at CPAC in America later on in the show. But first, prepare for bad language on this brand new show from Angela Rayner called Beyond the Bubble, which features Michael Gove as her sparring partner. And I think what this does really show you is that the mainstream media are completely determined to try and create a left-wing media ecosystem, one that is dominated by the likes of Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, Emily Maitlis and John Sopel, Ed Balls and George Osborne, and now Rayner. And there's a bigger picture at play, of course, because this is part of her rehabilitation, both financially and morally, to get her into number 10 Downing Street. And at that point, I'm sure there's a lot that she can do for a big media company like Global, right? Including trying to censor the internet and shows like this. But do we really think that Rayner is the right person to be given her own podcast, given some of her fruity language? Watch.
You cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic... Go on, Andrew.
Oh yes, her street language is what she called it.
Government. We're being quite specific about who the scum are, or do you want to give me a list of names?
Well, I think anyone who leaves children hungry during a pandemic and can give billions of pounds to their mates on WhatsApp, I think that was pretty scummy. Now, that is a phrase, and let me contextualise it, it's a phrase that you would hear very often in northern working class towns, that we'd even say it jovially to other people. We say it's a scummy thing to do. And that, to me, is my street language, as you would say, about actually it's pretty appalling that people think that's okay to do.
Forget Beyond the Bubble. This new show should be called Scum Talk with Red Rayner, the tax invader.
that's characterised their hindsight-heavy behaviour. But, excuse me, did the Honourable Lady just call me scum?
Order! 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 From the front bench, we will not have remarks like that. Not under any circumstances, no matter how heartfelt it might be. Not at all. Point of order.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think one of the things I'd ask your guidance on is the honourable members saying things about the front bench which is inaccurate in their speech, and I'd ask them to withdraw it.
But of course, this new show is being celebrated by the mainstream media and the elite class, with The Times revealing the news by writing Angela Rayner is preparing to start a podcast called Beyond the Bubble as she seeks to broaden her appeal before a potential Labour leadership contest. The former Deputy Prime Minister has interviewed Lord Gove, the former Tory Cabinet Minister, as the star guest on the pilot, which is focused on housing. Rayner and Gove both served as housing secretaries, and the two recently gave evidence to a parliamentary committee about leasehold reform. Both championed legislation to give leaseholders and renters more rights while they were in office. The two are understood to get on well, despite their political differences. Not that different, really. Gove's a lefty too. Yes, he is now the editor of The Spectator, and he's said to have joked to Rayner after their appearance before MPs that she had been like Annie Lennox to his Dave Stewart from Eurythmics. Seriously, this is one double act the country can do without. In the first episode, Rayner conducts other interviews with people across the country about housing. The show was produced by Global, which owns the radio station LBC, but it is not clear if it has signed off a full series. The Times has previously disclosed that Rayner has made £100,000 from a combination of speeches and the advance on her memoirs, which are due to be published this year. The money will be more than enough to pay off any fine and potential tax bill issued by HM Revenue and Customs. Her latest declaration revealed that she received £19,000 for an after-dinner speech to management consultants last month. She said the work for the event, including the dinner and speech, had taken 5 hours and 45 minutes, meaning she was paid £55 a minute. The definition of a champagne socialist. But Guido Fawkes has some remaining questions for Angela Rayner. And, I mean, it's pretty ironic that the first episode of her new show is about housing. This would be far more interesting. Hello, Angela Rayner. Podcast sounds good. Anyway, where did you actually live between 2007 and 2015? If it was Vicarage Road, why do multiple neighbours say they never saw you there? If it was Lowndes Lane, why were you registered on the electoral roll at a different address for 6 years? Why did you give Lowndes Lane as your address when re-registering your children's birth certificates in October 2010, just weeks after your wedding, while you were simultaneously registered to vote at Vicarage Road? Which document was wrong? Why was your brother Darren Bowen listed on the electoral roll at Lowndes Lane with your ex-husband Mark Rayner for several years? Was he living there as a tenant? And if you had moved out of Vicarage Road, was that property claiming a single person's council tax discount? Why was Labour reported to have used party funds to hire Jonathan Peacock KC to review your stamp duty position on your Hove flat? And given that you also claimed in 2024 to have taken expert tax and legal advice confirming no capital gains tax was owed on the council house sale, who paid for that advice? Did Labour cover that as well? And Connor Tomlinson, I'm almost certain those are questions that Michael Gove will not be putting to Angela Rayner in the debut episode of her new global radio podcast.
Wow, Michael Gove recording something and then evading important questions. I never heard that one, Dan. Please let me know when that podcast drops, because I'll be sticking pins in my eyes in that evening instead of listening to it. I can't really imagine anything Angela Rayner has to say that's particularly interesting other than what all those rent boys were doing at Keir Starmer's front door. And as I said to you earlier in the show, Dan, but we'll repeat for the segment, this seems to indicate that one of two things. One, she doesn't believe that Keir Starmer's going anywhere anytime soon, and so she is launching a prospective media career to increase her public profile in the long haul, or she's doing a rapid media dash ahead of a prospective leadership change to cement her credentials among the Labour discontented, Labour backbench left, and especially the dwindling base. At this point, Labour's only on about 17 to 18% of the country, and that's roughly the share of the country that work for the state. So they really just are the party of the NHS and the civil service. It is ironic, though, that it's called Beyond the Bubble, because I can't think of anyone more SW1 than Michael Gove, the cabinet minister who served for the longest in the last 14 years of Conservative government and is responsible for so many failures, inventing the term British values, for example, at the Department of Education, concocting that terrible extremism definition with Hope Not Hate employee Dame Sarah Khan, whose sister ran the Don't Look Back in Anger department at the Home Office. And of course, they're going to talk about housing for, probably about an hour, Dan. I wonder if the word immigration and its impact on housing prices will be mentioned once. I'll probably bet you a tenner not.
I don't think so. Connor, isn't it also fascinating the way that the mainstream media talk about Angela Rayner's big earnings now as such a positive, and compare and contrast that to the reporting of, for example, Nigel Farage's earnings, which are always greeted with total derision in the mainstream media? It's like it's okay for her to make lots of money as an MP because she's paying off a tax bill that she should have never avoided in the first place. I find it quite an astonishing lack of sort of awareness of hypocrisy, I guess, from the mainstream media yet again.
Yeah, shock, Dan. They're being hypocrites. It's not about hypocrisy, of course, it's about hierarchy. They give all of the benefits of the doubt in the world to their friends, and then to their political enemies, they give them no charity. I will say, though, Dan, regarding Nigel Farage, and I'm not someone who looks down on someone for making a fair living. I mean, blimey, I'd love to keep more of my earnings than are currently squandered away on tax to pay for the social housing of Somalians and DJ lessons for illegal migrants. However, there is an issue with Farage, and that is, yes, he is very high earning, from all sorts of gold sponsorships and his GB News spot, which he scarcely presents, and his cameo appearances, which are less than displaying his leadership qualities when he's saying up the rah and hello to Big Chungus. But Nigel Farage doesn't spend much time in his constituency. He doesn't spend much time addressing the concerns of his constituents, and so it is actually a real problem when he's making a hell of a lot of money despite not really doing his job as an MP. He's not moving the needle in the Overton window in the national conversation. He's certainly not fixing problems in Clacton. Contrast this again with Rupert Lowe, who has made his money, who donates his parliamentary salary to charity. Farage isn't exactly a poor man. Lowe is much higher net worth, but Farage isn't exactly, like Oliver Twist begging for more gruel because he can't pay for the food on his table or the roof over his head. And Rupert Lowe, despite that, still hosts the independent rape gang inquiry that he crowdfunded, still has a large amount of parliamentary questions, still attends debates, pushes parliamentary petitions, and actually, attends votes in the Commons, many of which Nigel Farage has skipped out on. One time, I remember, to present his GB News show to talk about smoky bacon crisps, rather than, I think it was to vote on the assisted dying or the abortion bill, one or the other. So it turns out that, yeah, you can make a fair bit of money. I don't think Angela Rayner's speaking fees or her book are going to make for well-paid or very compelling reading, given she's hardly the most erudite woman in the world. I wonder how many times ChatGPT will churn out the use of the word scum in her particular book. Maybe she should take ghostwriting tips from Matt Goodwin. However, it does show that if you do make your money, it should be balanced with time in your constituency and actually serving both your voters and the country.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was totally nuts that Farage was on Cameo. In particular, that always felt a very weird thing as a party leader. But at the end of the day, either it's okay for all politicians to make money or it's not. And there's totally different responses to Rayner compared to Farage. But look, I want to show you, because we spoke about the fake news agents, obviously Global also behind their podcast, still totally obsessed with Liz Truss in quite a stalkerish type way. Lewis Goodall's followed her to the other side of the world, to the CPAC conference in America. I think it's in Dallas. And I just love the way that she totally rejects him here. Watch this.
We've allowed Islamism to grow in our country, and that is the fundamental problem. And now I have called for a Trump-style revolution. That is what we need in Britain. That is what we need in Europe, because most people in our country don't agree with all this stuff. They want to have a family, they want to buy a house, they want a nice car, they want to go on holiday, they want to live in a Christian country. They don't want their country taken over.
Liz Truss, hi. Have you got 2 minutes for the newsagents?
Definitely not.
Why not? We want to ask you why you've been spreading lies about Britain. You said yesterday that there is Islamism in Britain. There isn't. Why are you lying about Britain? Why are you slagging Britain off, Liz Truss? You say you love ideas, Liz Truss.
Definitely not.
We've
That was
allowed-
great, wasn't it, Connor?
Yeah, I remember I was up with Liz and CPAC in February of 2025, and we were, as we were just walking through the corridors, constantly getting harassed by disingenuous leftist journos. I remember a guy from the Times, because the Times had been skulking around trying to write a hit piece on her at one point, came up and acted all friendly, and she just ignored him, and he sort of pulled me to a side, and he was like, "Oh, can you put in a good word for me?" And I was like, "Why would I do that, mate?" And he was like, "Well, you work for her, don't you?" I was like, "No, I'm not a dog's body, I'm just her friend." He was like, it's just very put out the moment that he couldn't get anything out of me. And you see Lewis Goodall there try and do the, "Oh, Liz Truss, would you care to give a moment to the newsagents for us?" And she just goes, "Definitely not." And then he immediately, like the mask drops, the fangs of the snake come out, and just pure vitriol and spite, and lies, by the way, you know. Okay, Lewis, there's no Islamism in Britain. Very good. What about your two Jewish co-hosts, Emily Maitlis and John Sopel? Do you think that they think there's Islamism in the United Kingdom when, for example, a Syrian jihadist goes and shoots at a bunch of Jews in a synagogue? Like, at the very least, they would concede that's the example. They might not care about, you know, the Muslim rape gangs and the Manchester Arena bombing and the London Bridge attack and Lee Rigby, and I could just go on and on, Dan. But at the very least, when Muslims are shooting at Jews, that means there is Islamism in the country, right? Oh, okay, you're just lying to try and carry out your irrational vendetta against Liz Truss? Well, it shows you haven't got much in the way of integrity, does it, Lewis?
Liz Truss has done some interviews out there, though, Connor, including this with News Nation, where she's very clear about how she wants Americans to deal with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Watch this.
What is your view of King Charles' upcoming trip to the United States to meet with President Trump?
Well, I think it's very good that he's visiting the United States of America. Obviously, 250 years since independence. You know, on one hand, we're sad because that was the moment at which you guys decided to leave us. But on the other hand, it has been a huge success as a country. And I think it's only right that our monarch visits at this really important time for the US.
Yeah, as a daughter of the American Revolution, I think we've been through some things, but we can also get over them. Finally, can't let you leave without asking about this. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are reportedly having financial issues in Los Angeles. There's been talk about them going back to the UK, but is there a path for them, given everything that has happened with the statements that they have made about the royal family, the dysfunction, to get back not just to England, but into the royal family?
Well, that's really a matter for the King and the other members of the royal family. But as far as I'm concerned, you're very welcome to keep them in California.
All right. Liz Truss, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
So she's there, Connor. She's there. She is speaking just to people who aren't the enemy.
Yeah, that's one deportation I don't want to see happen, Dan. Dare I agree with our mutual friend Liz, though. I was recently out in Hungary, and CPAC Hungary was a week before CPAC USA, which I haven't attended this year. I think partly because well, some of Liz's new team members aren't all that keen on me, but we'll put that to one side. And I think that at the time where the Trump revolution has stalled and appears to have betrayed its base, and I don't say that without, you know, having friends in the Trump administration trying to do good things for Britain. They're doing their best. But at a time where mass deportations have all but halted, at a time where Trump is allowing transgender surgeries to take place on children so long as the parents consent, and at a time where they are bombing Iran, despite promising no more forever wars, and Trump himself said this might turn into a forever war. He said it's a war of regime change. Marco Rubio said, look, the Israelis were going to strike, so we had to follow them in. Actually, you didn't, because it's not in the American people's interests. I don't think we should actually say we want a Trump-style revolution anymore, because the Trump-style revolution has clearly proven insufficient thus far. We shouldn't pass judgment on the effectiveness of the Trump revolution until it's completed. And I don't think, unlike Reform UK has decided to do when the Iran war launches, I don't think Britain should tie its fortunes to America. I love America. I've got plenty of friends in America. But I don't think Britain is America. We need to do things our way. And I think Rupert Lowe was very clear on that in his stance towards the Iran war, and also in the opening video for Restore Britain. There won't be fireworks. There won't be the big hair of CPAC. It will be a grim and difficult job, but we will do it in the British way.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Although, of course, I think, Connor, it's fair to say that Liz Truss has always been far more hawkish and definitely isn't isolationist. Certainly, if you compare like her policy position on this to Rupert Lowe, but it is.
I will say, Dan, quickly, if I may, I'm not an isolationist. I just think that we should be, if we're going to engage in military conflict, we should be at the point where, like the British Empire could, bomb Zanzibar into submission in 40 minutes, and we should actually have strategic goals in mind, rather than just, prating about in the Middle East for 20 years, only to increase oil prices and import more terrorists.
Connor Tomlinson, you can get much more of that on Tomlinson Talks on YouTube and Substack. Have an amazing weekend, Connor. Thank you so much. But we're now going to reveal today's worst Briton in the world this week. It's where we put our Union Jackass winners from across the week head to head. So on Monday, Matthew Wright for his appalling treatment of Connie Shaw of the Free Speech Union on LBC. Tuesday, Matt Goodwin for the disaster surrounding his book. Wednesday, Morgan McSweeney for his phone theft lie. Thursday, John Swinney, the failed Scottish First Minister, for his total hysteria over the Reform UK leader in Scotland telling a gay joke 8 years ago. And lots of comments from you have come in. Vince Marshall says, Dickheads Gallery, I still remember Matthew Wright with the ponytail in the Convid days. What a throbber. Oh my God, I remember that too. Grim. John Highhill says, Matthew Wright sure is one lefty tosser. He's worse than James O'Brien, and that's saying something. Douglas Wright says, Matt Goodwin should be higher up in the list. He is a traitor who used to work for Hope Not Hate. Michael Connor says, since Matt Goodwin has become a part of Reform, he has certainly changed his rhetoric to more pro-immigration. Reform, according to Farage, is a pro-immigration party. Inkfish says, I'm Scottish, so from my point of view, it has to be the Islamo-commie Swinney. Alexander agrees, saying John Swinney can piss off, and the rest of his SNP goons. And Mercury says, Morgan McSweeney losing his phone is ridiculous. Everything on it can be retrieved by the police legally or without the actual phone. That can also be done covertly or overtly. So a real mix of opinions, but now I'm going to reveal the results. Okay, let me just get to them here. In fourth position, with, I think it is 8% of the vote, Matt Goodwin. In third position, with 14% of the vote, John Swinney. The runner-up, with 26% of the vote, Matthew Wright. But the worst Briton in the world this week, with 53% of the vote, Morgan McSweeney for his phone theft lie. Okay, we're moving over to Substack now for the Royal Uncancelled After Show. Prince Harry is in full-on panic mode about Prince William stripping Archie and Lily of their titles, and his rapidly shrinking hairline. We'll have the latest as royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz returns. Please come and join us there at www.outspoken.live. We are back live Monday, 5 p.m. UK time. I believe we're back to midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank God on Monday. Remember to hit subscribe right now on YouTube. Turn on the notification bell. Have an incredible weekend. Do subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.